Listener-supported St. Gabriel Catholic Radio AM 820 brings you Family Sanctuary, a show that inspires living the gospel message in word and deed within our families. And now, Family Sanctuary with host Peggy Hartshorn.
Welcome to the Family Sanctuary, focusing on life-giving relationships and the family. I'm your host, Peggy Hartshorn, chairman of Heartbeat International, that advances life-affirming pregnancy help around the world. And today we have a guest that you may have heard before on St. Gabriel Catholic Radio. We have another program in our archives with Andrea Trudden. And welcome, Andrea. Welcome back to the program.
Oh, glad to be back.
Let me introduce Andrea and our topic today. We're going to be focusing in on a topic that is near and dear to Andrea's heart and also to her profession as the Vice President of Communications for Heartbeat International. And of course, near and dear to my heart as well, because I was formerly a college English professor. I love studying words, understanding words, helping people realize the impact and the importance of the word that we choose and the words that we choose, and how we can really also words can be used in such a manipulative way, and that's what's happening in the language that we're going to be talking about today, which is the language of abortion. And how is that language being used today, and how is it really manipulative and spreading lies and leading us into so many paths that are so dangerous? So we want to talk about that, as well as how can we actually fight against that. Yes, prayer is absolutely essential, of course, but in our own language, in our families, in our friendships, in our parishes, how can we talk to people using the kind of language that will really bring about the truth and help them understand that manipulation that they're hearing in the press and in the media, and sometimes from our own friends who have been influenced. So let me introduce Andrea more properly. Andrea oversees the public face of Heartbeat International and its network of more than 3,000 pregnancy help organizations as our Vice President of Communications and Marketing. She began her professional career in radio while she was obtaining a degree in journalism and communications from The Ohio State University. And she took those skills that she was developing in speaking and writing and communication into the pro-life movement. And so she's one of the voices that you may hear in the media for Heartbeat International on radio and television interviews. And she also helps our Pregnancy Help Network understand more about communications. She's certified in inbound and email marketing. She works in social media as well. She has opportunities to speak to organizations on messaging clearly and effectively in trying to advance their mission. So she keeps her eyes and ears really attuned to what is being said, promoted, marketed in terms of abortion in our world today. She and her husband, Dan, have 3 children, Juliana, Angela, and Lucas. She says they want to change the world when they grow up.
They're working on it.
Like their mom and dad. So welcome, Andrea. You and your husband and family are also members of St. Paul the Apostle Church in Westerville. So welcome. And as I mentioned in the introduction, this subject is so near and dear to my heart. You and I have been kind of sharing thoughts and ideas on this as well. And I wanted to start us out just with thinking back to the early days of my involvement in pro-life. And my husband and I got actively involved right at the time of the Supreme Court decision, right after January 22nd, 1973, when Roe v. Wade was handed down. And I was following the issue before that because I was in college in California. At the time, California became one of the first states to legalize abortion. So I was tuned into what was happening. And as a cradle Catholic, I was very pro-life. I was shocked by what was going on. And as a person who loved language, I was an English major, I paid attention to the words. And at that time, I would say that even though, of course, abortion, the pro-abortionists thought that Roe v. Wade was a great victory, they also I think in the culture there was still some reticence even about the word abortion. It had some negative connotations. And so so the terms about abortion in those days, the one that you heard the most was right to choose. Abortion is a choice, and it's my body, my choice. All right. So the idea that was focused on that was trying, and the wording, of course, was carefully chosen to try to influence people in that direction. Right. So who could be against choice? And I can remember so many pro-lifers in those days, we were just, how did they come up with this language that, how do we combat that? Because it was very difficult to break through that. That's what I would call a euphemism. They didn't want to say the word abortion. All right. Now we've gotten to the point, you and I were brainstorming, what's a new slogan they're using today? Shout my abortion.
Shout my abortion.
Shout my abortion. All right. Over the last 50 years, and particularly since the overturn of Roe v. Wade in the Dobbs decision, the idea that abortion is something to be proud of, we're past the euphemism stage, and we're at the point where we are really using language, or we hear language constantly on the pro-abortion side of this issue that is really trying to break down any instinct that people have that abortion might be something wrong.
Right. Yeah. And we were talking about the fact that over the years and the variations as to how they've been softening that language for such a long time to get abortion kind of known as the choice. And so it's
as a mainstream choice.
And it's empowering women, and it gives them that ability. So it's interesting now to see the both and extremes. Because on the one hand, you have it to where they're completely not using the word abortion. They're changing the language. They're softening how they talk about pregnancy and that it's not a baby. And they're dehumanizing completely, but not saying abortion necessarily. And then the other extreme is that shout my abortion. For those who've had it and experienced abortion, they want them to be affirmed that the choice was an amazing one and they need to be empowered by that choice and how freeing it was, while missing the entire middle of the nation and all those in the middle who really don't want abortion. We've talked about that, where it's like nobody wants to have that abortion. So it's fun to look at the extremes. Fun, I say, kind of ironically.
As a person interested in language.
Exactly. Because you're seeing the two complete opposites happening, where they're completely muddying what it means while also embracing and shouting it loudly. So it's very
shows the conflict, doesn't it? It shows the conflict in our culture, and even in the culture of those who are pro-abortion. Because we know through pregnancy help, we've talked to so many women who are thinking of abortion, or have even decided they want to have an abortion, or they say they want to have an abortion. But when you really help them get past the fears and barriers that are really clouding their instinct, that maternal instinct that God gave us that is so strong. I have never heard a woman that I have talked to ultimately say, I really want to have an abortion. They'll say, I have to do it. But they don't really want to. Interestingly, you and I were involved in an interview with CNN recently, and that's a point that I made to the CNN reporter, which she put in the article. However, the women that she had interviewed also on the other side, the article concluded with one of those women who was very pro-abortion saying, well, I had an abortion, but of course I didn't want it.
Right. They affirm it. They understand that no woman wakes up thinking, you know what? I think I'm going to have an abortion today.
I want to do that today.
Nobody does that. And even as you mentioned, what we see in the pregnancy help organizations is when the women are asked the questions, it turns out that they don't want an abortion. They feel they have no choice. Right. So it's fascinating to hear that word choice so often, where we hear it from the women directly who are in those moments, who truly feel they're either being coerced or they feel very alone, but they feel that they have no choice. And then when they have options opened up to them, that's when they have this sense of freedom. And it's like, wait a minute, I do have options here.
Mm-hmm,
And so it's like, there are choices that are available to me. Abortion is
Sure.
not the only choice that is
Sure.
there.
Absolutely. And isn't it odd, even though, of course, you still hear it's my choice, you still hear that term, or my body, my choice, even though it's not quite as common. However, the irony again that pregnancy health centers who provide all those choices are now in the bullseye of attack from the other side.
Well, because it's the life-affirming choices. Therefore, in the minds of many, as we kind of dissect the different language that has been out there, when you look at the search engine results that come up when you look for abortion, or you watch a television show and hear the music in pop culture today, it's all about empowering and being in complete control. And then you kind of take any life-affirming word that would even be associated with that, and it's completely nixed. It's thrown out because they certain organizations, certain companies and corporations see to it that anything that is not abortion is not pointed to when you are talking about reproductive health or choices in regard to women's rights.
Can you give an example of what you're talking about?
Yeah. So when you start to really dissect the mindset of a woman when she feels that when she wakes up and she thinks that she's scared or she thinks that she's pregnant and she doesn't know what to do, where's she going to go? Typically in today's world, honestly, actually now she's going to TikTok or Google and she's looking for help there. Well, certain pro-life organizations are completely banned from those sites. They're not allowed to advertise. The abortion pill reversal is not allowed to be on Google at all, advertised, because it is seen by Google as misinformation, in spite of the fact that we know that more than 4,000 lives have been saved through its use.
Let's just stop there for a quick minute to say that Abortion Pill Reversal, the Abortion Pill Reversal network of over 1,200 providers who will provide that protocol, which is a very healthy protocol of progesterone, which can be taken by a woman while she's in the process of an abortion pill abortion, after she's taken the first pill, before she's taken the second. And we have the evidence of 4,000 very healthy live babies being born as a result of stopping that abortion. All right. Abortion pill reversal, reversing that first pill. You're saying, and here's a perfect example, that women can't find that.
Oh, it's completely censored. And it's not just on Google, but Facebook and other big tech organizations as well. And then if you even see it written about in news articles, depending upon which outlet you're in, most mainstream ones will always have a qualifier stating that it is unproven and casting doubts. And that's one of the things that you definitely see in various news articles or blogs, different magazines. I love, I'm a glutton for punishment. I love following like Teen Vogue and seeing how they talk about different issues related to abortion and how they are talking to teen girls about it.
So what are they saying? What's the language they're using or the kinds of promotion?
Everything is that it is an empowering tool to utilize and have access to. And anything that basically any restriction, any regulation by states or by any organization, pharmaceutical companies, things like that, any censorship of abortion is wrong. And it's an attack against women, which we'll talk about how the pregnant people come in later. But it's an attack against them directly. When you make it to where they're writing it in a way that women should be fearful that they're trying to take their rights away, that they're trying to take a choice away from them, and they play off those fears.
And actually, let me reintroduce our host or our guest, because we're almost halfway through our program and we've got so much more we want to talk about, Andrea. Andrea Trudden, who is the Vice President of Communications and Marketing for Heartbeat International and an expert in communications and specifically focused on abortion communications. So we've been talking about, we started with kind of a euphemistic attitude toward abortion. Often the word wasn't used. It was my choice. Now we're back to shouting about abortion, promoting abortion, saying it's a positive thing for women, as well as sometimes trying to obscure it, but that's because they want to get more into the social media. The example that you and I talked about was now the abortion pill, because the abortion pill, Google protocol indicates that unless you're a pharmaceutical company, you can't be advertising a pill, right?
Right.
So how are they advertising the abortion pill now?
So it is interesting to kind of watch how that term in particular has adjusted over the years, because it started out as like RU486 and then mifepristone, misoprostol, so the technical terms, but then it turned to like the abortion pill to be more like mainstream, moving then to medication abortions. And now what we are starting to see is missed period pills. And so what they're advocating for is women to have these in their homes just in case they have a missed period. And so that allows them, because of certain algorithms on social media and in Google, certain word combinations such as abortion and pills, if you're not a pharmaceutical company, you cannot advertise for it. And what we know is abortion pills account for more than half of the abortions in the United States, and many of them come from overseas companies online.
Right.
And so while it is good that Google and Facebook and others are trying to crack down on those people who are trying to take advantage of these young women illegally, they're working with the language to try to get around it by instead of saying abortion pill, they're going to miss period. And we're starting to see that more and more actually in the U.S. articles and such, not just overseas, but they're trying to get that more in line, and you'll start to see
and again,
it.
that will obscure for many people the knowledge of what these missed period pills really do. They don't just bring your period on, they actually cause abortions.
And it's so it's pumping young girls and young women who do take them, one, because they are not necessarily from here. We don't know what is in them. We cannot advocate we would never advocate for that, but we cannot even affirm what the woman has taken.
Right.
So if she has issues and needs to go to the hospital, that's a huge issue because don't necessarily know what it is.
That's
and
right.
then also
the dangers to women, absolutely.
Under the guise of women empowerment.
Yeah. Quickly, let's just point out too the crazy, confusing language that has been brought into this discussion now because of the whole transgender issue. And the press is now, even AP, the Associated Press guidelines and so forth, they're trying to get away from using the terms men and women. Because, of course, not everybody is a man or a woman, according to them.
Right. It's very interesting.
And so if you don't say men or women, you have terms like, for instance, pregnant people. Or people with uteruses.
Yes.
These are terms now that you will find.
These are in the AP style book, which means the AP style book is followed by most of the large newspaper networks. And so you have a few newspapers that actually run most of the local papers and things nationwide.
Yes.
So if they're all following this AP style book, they're getting actually quite mixed messages as of this year, because in May, they added the phrase pregnant people to describe trans and non-binary people, or people who could get pregnant but not necessarily identify as women. They were trying to be more inclusive. And it ended up actually shooting them in the foot, because in May as well was when the Dobbs leak happened. So people were starting to talk about abortion, and women were, rightly so, getting very offended that all of these newspapers were now excluding them.
We're talking about women.
They weren't talking about women. They were utilizing the topic of abortion, but then excluding women and saying pregnant people. And now we see this in our politicians' language as well, because we've seen senators use it when talking about abortion rights, about pregnant people. And so they actually, the AP style, to jump ahead into August, they updated their language to say, well, actually, I'll just quote them. Because they said pregnant women, pregnant people. Pregnant women or women seeking abortions is acceptable phrasing. Phrasing like pregnant people or people seeking abortion is also acceptable to include people who've had those experiences but do not identify as women. use judgment and decide what is most appropriate. That takes out all accountability while still excluding women in certain cases.
But again, abortion, this reminded me of how abortion and contraception have always been treated slightly differently ever since the beginning. Yes, now they don't want to use the word woman, but you can use the word women when you're talking about abortion. All right. It reminded me of how from the very beginning of this whole thing, and it started with the pill, parental rights were thrown out the window. School counselors in the 60s and 70s could take a girl to an abortion clinic or family planning clinic, put her on the pill, actually take her for an abortion without parental consent.
And we're seeing that in certain states again.
All abortion as somehow this reproductive health, which is again started as a euphemism for abortion, reproductive health care, and now, it really always accepted abortion from the standards. So we see that again today. It's just amazing. So we've been talking about the language, starting with right to choose. Remember the Clinton years, safe, legal, and rare. That's been thrown out the window. Absolutely. Women's rights. And the use of these terms to manipulate people's thinking and to break down our instincts that are really God-given, for mothers to protect their children, for fathers to protect their children. You hear a lie long enough and you just it begins to break down, you begin to believe it. So what can we do? We've got a few minutes here, Andrea, to talk about. We're not in charge of the AP. We can't change that.
No. And it's beyond that because it is in all of our pop culture today. So
yes.
For our youth.
So what do we do as concerned people about this? I think it's important that we can't be afraid of talking about the truth with our children, with our siblings, with our friends. I've heard people say that now abortion is a taboo subject, even to discuss in the church, in their church groups, in their Bible studies, because so many Catholics now have had abortions, and we want to always express our hope that they will find the help and healing that they need, because Jesus is ready to forgive that and to help them become whole again. And we want them to seek that help and find that help, which is readily available. But because of that, and because of the lies that people have been hearing in the media for so long, it's very difficult to even bring up the subject. Or when someone uses language like this that is so misleading and untrue, how do we talk about it? So I'm thinking that how we like to talk about this in Heartbeat is something I'd like to share at this point. And that's what we call the love approach. And it's a way of communicating where your first goal is to really listen to the other person. That is the very loving thing to do. If someone would say, for instance, well, every woman has to have the right to an abortion, they're taking away our rights, and the first thing I think it's important to do is listen to that person and say, well, okay, tell me about that. You sound really upset by that. Tell me about that. Tell me about that feeling. Right. There's something under that anger or that fear or that passion that's being expressed there. Well, tell me about that. Why is that important to you? I want to know. And let's unpack that with the person. And when we do that in a pregnancy center, and with each other, actually, we find that there are so many feelings that need to be expressed there, experiences that need to be explored, help that maybe needs to be provided, and so spending most of that conversation just listening is so important. And what we find is sometimes people sort through things on their own as they start sharing.
It's very good to be quiet and just allow them to speak because so much gets released at that time.
And it's so difficult now to have a debate on this issue.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, really, it's almost impossible to say, okay, well, let me hear your side and then let me give my side. No,
Right.
it's not going to work. Let's sort this out logically.
No logic.
Let's see how many times, you're drawing a conclusion without enough evidence. No, that I don't think is where we need to be today. In our families, with our friends, in our communities, in our parishes, we need to really listen. And then when that person feels respected and cared about because they've been listened to, they're much more likely to listen to you.
Because that trust has been there. Because it's not you
Absolutely.
talking at them. You're listening and receiving the information and then opening some new doors.
Yes, you open other options and ways of thinking about it. And then you can also weave in the V step, a new vision. What if the person has had an abortion?
Exactly.
How about that vision that, that must have been a terrible thing for you to have to go through. And, Jesus loves you, and and help and hope is available. If you really want to unburden yourself and accept the love and forgiveness that's there, sharing that kind of a vision. Or if the woman has been sharing perhaps a pregnancy that she had where she had no help and support, what about the vision that, you can help and support others in a very positive way, so that they would never have to go through what you've gone through. There is help and hope available. So a new vision and perhaps some practical help also. So that's the love approach in the E step, the enabling and helping people to make a positive choice with practical help. So the most important thing, I think, is the avenues of communication. Well, sorry that we're out of time, and there's so much more we can discuss. Maybe we can come back and try it again.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing how much there is and how language is all around us in the shows, in the news, in the articles, in the music. It exists everywhere. So understanding.
Pay attention.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for listening to St. Gabriel Catholic Radio, the Family Sanctuary. And I'm your host, Peggy Hartshorn, with archives at stgabrielradio.com. So please join us again to strengthen our families and make them sanctuaries of life as God intends.
Family Sanctuary is a production of listener-supported St. Gabriel Catholic Radio, AM 820. Archives of Family Sanctuary with Peggy Hartshorn are available at stgabrielradio.com.